Good morning, everyone. Hope you're well. This is a dive into Samkhya philosophy, right? Samkhya philosophy by the sage Kapila is one of the six orthodox schools of Indian philosophical thought, and we are on Karika number 17. So the passage, 17th passage, and we are basically at this point where Kapila is more or less maybe convincing us that the spirit exists. And, maybe, discernment, right, is such discrimination is such an important part of, studying these philosophical systems. We don't want to go in this just like totally believing like everything that we read. We want to kind of pass things through our own filter, have a healthy level of skepticism. Okay, so in the 17th passage, as I mentioned, we're looking at, really, this is kind of the first introduction to the spirit. And it goes something like this. The spirit exists since composite objects are meant for another, since it is the reverse of that which has three attributes and the rest. Since there must be control, since there must be someone who enjoys, and since there's activity for release, or activity for liberation, right? Okay, so we, much like using discrimination, a lot of these philosophical schools rely on inference, right? And that is kind of collecting data, if you will, and coming to a conclusion that might not be directly drawn from the the individual pieces of data that you have collected, but you look at it as a whole, and then come to that conclusion. So as he kind of ticks off these different pieces of data, if you will, right? The spirit exists since composite objects are meant for another. I'll get to these. Since it is the reverse of that which has three attributes and the rest. Since there must be control, which is an interesting one. Since there must be someone who enjoys, the enjoyers is so good. And since there is activity for release. Now, if you remember the basic setup of Samkhya philosophy, we have these 26 evolutes from which nature, or the spirit, is kind of connected to through nature, right? So you have things like the ego and your higher intelligence. You have the three gunas. You have the 10 gross elements. You have the 10 subtle elements. Five gross elements, 5 subtle elements, and then the 10 senses. So you have these parts, right? And they're all they're more or less born from this spirit. And part of this is the reverse, right? It must exist because it exists since it is the reverse of that which has three attributes and the rest. Right? Three attributes and the rest. So it's, if things, what goes up must come down, kind of thing. Now you think about things just like in nature. So let's consider this concept of the enjoyer. All right, and we'll look at how nature kind of operates as a whole, right? So you have something like, of course, the sun, right, and fresh air and rain, and you have soil, and from this soil we have the myriad of plants from which we might have something that becomes edible, right? So you have this thing that is edible, and therefore it must have a use for something, right? So of course, different animals, including ourselves as humans, can enjoy something like a carrot, right? That is, kind of brought up from these, from this aggregate of, water and soil, things that are, necessarily living, right? They are objects. You have, then you have like this living thing that becomes a carrot, And then the carrot itself is enjoying the water and the soil and so on, and then we ourselves enjoy the carrot. And it becomes this cycle, of course, right? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? We'll become food for something else at some point. Now, so in the meantime, though, we enjoy the carrot from which springs forth from nature. We do get an opportunity to enjoy this carrot. Its purpose is there, maybe not for us, but the way that nature has unfolded at this moment is that we have an opportunity to enjoy it and receive nourishment from it. Now, the same thing is kind of true here, and this is what Kapila essentially is getting at. Why we can infer that the spirit does in fact exist is that it becomes the knower, or the enjoyer, I should say, the enjoyer of nature itself. So if we look at something like soil and water and stuff, things that are insentient, right? Things that don't necessarily seem to have any type of consciousness to them. A vibration, yes, that's something that I believe. They have a vibration that is kind of essential for all living things, but maybe not consciousness. And then eventually, you put all these things together, we get the carrot. Right? And then we work our way up through nature, and we come up with something like ourselves, or more sentient animals that do have consciousness. Varying degrees of consciousness. We have varying degrees of consciousness within our own humanity as well, right? We see this with various characters, whether in fiction or nonfiction, right? In real life or not in real life. All right, so we have this consciousness. We have an ability to enjoy the carrot. Nature itself as a whole doesn't necessarily have consciousness. There must be something for it, something that must enjoy nature. Kapila is suggesting here that the spirit itself is consciousness of nature and has an opportunity to then enjoy its creation. So that's the line of thinking there as far as the enjoyer goes. I mentioned the reverse. We have yes, and it's activity to release. Now he gets in kind of deep here, if you will. This idea, the last part, that the bond created, rolling along with this idea of the enjoyer, the bond that's created between the enjoyer and that which is being enjoyed becomes very strong. And of course, we know in our yoga practice that detachment is incredibly important. So the idea that something is created for us to enjoy, that's not the end of it, right? The end of it is having control over ourselves, our own consciousness, so that we might feel or practice a level of detachment towards those things that can then be enjoyed. It's one thing, but I do want to get back to this idea, since I said control. The spirit exists since there must be control. That's another thing. And like the laws of the cosmos, the laws of nature. Where do these laws of nature kind of come from? This is another kind of concept, or again, an inference from which Kapila derives the spirit, because you have like all these things kind of like operating, and nature itself is neutral, right? It's not chaotic as it might seem. It's trying to constantly keep itself in balance and harmonious, right? So we see these fluctuating weather patterns. So we see things like the four essential forces, right? You have something like, let's put it in different terms, right? The radiance, the bigness of things like stars, but at the same time, you have like this subtleness of like gravity kind of holding all that radiance together, right, into this ball. Otherwise, it would just wash itself out. So there's like this constant balance. Where does this balance come from? Where does this control come from? And Kapila here suggests that this control of nature is guided or nudged, if you will, by the spirit. Okay, so let's sit up nice and tall. Close your eyes. So soften your eyes, your jaw. Align your ears over your shoulders, over your hips. Soften your body a bit. And of course, with pranayama, if you find any difficulties with your breathing practice, just simply move back into your own natural breathing. We're going to do 3 rounds of regular breathing. We're going to do 3 rounds of inhale retention with bandhas. I'll guide you, don't worry about it. And then 3 rounds of regular breathing. So let's just first inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Deep inhale and then exhale. And try to exhale all the way to the bottom. Exhale out a little bit more. Let's take a nice full inhale. Inhale. Inhale all the way up to the top. Hold. Draw your chin down. Draw your shoulders back. Hollow out your belly. Right? Holding. Exhale. Exhale. Remember, exhale all the way to the bottom. We'll repeat that 2 more times. Full inhale all the way up to the top. Inhale a little bit more. Chin down, hold the breath. Shoulder blades back, chest up, hollow belly, maybe pulsing your root lock. Hold. Calm yourself. Move your mind within. Then exhale. Exhale. Do that 1 more time. I want you to draw your senses inward. Deep inhale. All the way to the top. Draw in a little bit more. And hold. Chin down, chest up, shoulders back, belly hollow, pulsing root lock. Draw your senses inward. Exhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Just take a few moments. Even out your breathing. Stay focused on your breath. Move to an exhale. Deep inhale, shoulders rise. And exhale through your mouth. Roll your shoulders back and down. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Enjoy your day. Be sure to take good care of yourself and take care of others. All right, peace.